thanks for joining us. The fate of an 1849 abortion law now in the hands of Wisconsin's Supreme Court.
Justices today heard oral arguments from both sides, but are expected to rule on the ban that cannot be enacted, with liberals holding the majority on the court. Jason Zimmerman has been following the hearing. He's live in our studio now with the First Alert update. Jason.
Bill, we should have a ruling in the next few weeks. The case comes after liberals last year flipped the court from its conservative majority with the election of Janet Protasewicz, who campaigned on supporting abortion rights. The 1849 statute declares that ending the life of an unborn child is a felony, except when required to save the life of the mother. Democratic Attorney General Josh Kaul filed a lawsuit challenging the law. In 2022, he argued that a 1985 Wisconsin law that allows abortions before a fetus can survive outside the womb supersedes the ban. However, Sheboygan County District Attorney Joel Yermansky contends that the ban was never repealed and that it can coexist with the 1985 law because that law did not legalize abortion at any point. In July 2023, a Dane County judge ruled that the 1849 ban applies only to feticide and not consensual abortion. That led to providers, including Planned Parenthood, resuming abortion care the following September.
It remains on the books. Policymakers have not repealed it. Indeed, they have expressly declined to do so at multiple opportunities, and until they do, it can be enforced. It may be that the citizens of the state of Wisconsin would be better served by a different law, but that is not a question for this court or these parties to decide.
That's the attorney for the Sheboygan County District Attorney who appealed the previous ruling of the Dane County judge, causing it to go before the state Supreme Court right now. He also faced some tough questions.
Mr. Tomey, and I fear that what you are asking this court to do is to sign the death warrants of women and children and pregnant people in this state, because under your interpretation, they could all be denied life-saving medical care while the medical professionals who are charged with taking care of them are forced to sit idly by. This is the world gone mad. I don't understand how that is not the crime here.
A separate case filed by Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin is asking the state Supreme Court to rule directly on whether a constitutional right to abortion exists. That case will be heard, but so far, justices have not scheduled a time for those oral arguments. Cami, back to you.